Let's have a look at waste, because this obviously for consumers, for people going on holiday, this is a big issue for them because they do it at home, so they want to see it in practice when they go on holiday. But often it just doesn't happen. Sometimes when you ask hotels particularly, and I talk about hotels quite a lot to tour operators, but that's realistic, isn't it, considering that every one of your customers has got to stay somewhere, so accommodation is a key element of what you're selling or what you're having to engage with. So promoting good practice to them is as equally as important as doing it yourself. So get it right yourself, and it's easy. So what could you have to promote recycling? Well, decide on the different types of waste that you're going to be able to deal with. We call these waste streams. So for instance, paper would be, or cardboard and paper would be one waste stream. Plastic would be another waste stream. Glass would be another waste stream. Aluminium, tins, drinks cartons would be another. Batteries would be another. Toner cartridges would be another. So what can you actually separate out that you could then do something with, you can take it to? Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe all the things that I've just mentioned you can physically deal with in Croatia. There is a means of getting those off to somebody who could recycle them. Yes? Yeah. Think about the different types of work stream. Do apply some form of waste separation. Think about the prevention of accumulating the waste in the first place. Are you able, for instance, if you are having to buy boxes of paper, could you buy paper, reams of paper, that are just held together with some strapping tape and they don't come in a great big cardboard box, for instance? Think about the packaging coming into the office. Can you go back to the supplier and say, I would like to buy from you 20 reams of paper. I don't want to buy from you 10 boxes, cardboard boxes. Keep the cardboard boxes, I just want the paper. You can do that. You are the person that is buying, so you can demand how it arrives at your business. You have the right to do that. A lot of people don't tackle it, but you should do. We don't do enough about stimulating change. It's one of the ways in which you can tackle governments that don't provide infrastructure. If you are a sustainable business, you shouldn't just sit back and complain. That's nothing sustainable about that at all. What you should do is you've got the technology to spend 15 seconds, that's all it takes, to write a very quick email sentence and send it off to somebody saying, we are completely dissatisfied with the lack of infrastructure to do this. Could you please put this on your agenda to address? It takes 15 seconds to write that, and off it goes, and then you can forget about it. But at least you've done something. And if you all do the same, and they're getting these constantly, all of a sudden they'll say, oh, for goodness sake, I'm getting so many of these, we need to think about trying to do something to stop it. That's how change happens. But sitting back and doing nothing, nothing ever changes. So, this was a recycle point that I came across when I was training people in Johannesburg. It was a big hotel and convention centre, huge. They had, believe it or not, 23 conference rooms of this size. That's how big it was. And they had these all over the place. And at first sight, you look at them and you think, fantastic, they're promoting recycling. But what does it say on there? General waste, recycling symbol. Recyclables, recycling symbol. So, is it no surprise that when you look down them, it doesn't matter which hole you look down, you've got the same sort of things appearing in both of them. So you've got to think about the things that you give people, because what you say and what you do is going to determine the outcome. Okay? So think it through really carefully. Take your time to do that. Don't rush into something. Okay, getting to work, travelling around. What can we do? What can we do to think outside of this box that we all sit in? Okay? Because that's the thing you've got to break through. It's challenging the way you do things to make people do it differently. So, do people have to drive to work? Do they? Could you promote some car sharing scheme? Is it possible that you could provide an incentive to employees to make them think? You can't make them do it, but make them think, actually, I want to try and make this work. Well, the best way of doing that, if you provide car parking spaces, is to say to the staff, the only time we're going to allow you from now on to park in a company space is if you share the journey to work with somebody else. If you car share, you can have a space. If you don't, park in the street. Find somewhere else to park. The rest of the spaces are for visitors. You can justify it. And it makes people think about it. They'll go through a bit of pain at first, but then all of a sudden they'll think, actually there's something in that. We can combine, we can save money, it's not going to cost as much. Instead of having 4 cars coming to work, let's rotate and get one person to pick people up. Obviously there's dynamics to solve, but that's not your problem. You just throw this out as an idea and let them solve it. That's an option. Do people have a chance to come on bicycles? Could you promote that? Well, it seems to me that certainly in Zagreb, I mean, I don't know what it's like in the rest of Croatia. By the sound of it, Dubrovnik's not the place to be riding bicycles, but certainly in Zagreb, riding a bicycle seems fairly painless, and I should imagine there's quite a lot of people with bikes, isn't there? Yes. So, if you've got an office in Zagreb and your employees are coming from around Zagreb, then what about getting some form of some cycle scheme going? You've got to have racks for people to put them in, and maybe showers for somebody to be able to take a shower if it's a long journey and they're arriving to work with it. You don't want that all day. So you've got to be realistic. But a lot of companies, they even do a hire scheme for employees with bicycles. They'll provide one, or they give people a small financial incentive to come to work on a bicycle rather than coming by any other polluting means. Some people can be very clever on how they can find money to save to pay for those sorts of things. Especially if, for instance, if you're paying employees, some people do, some people don't. If you're paying employees a certain amount for travel to work in their pay, you can say to them, you will still get that if you come to work on a bicycle, which isn't going to cost you. So we'll still pay you that amount, but save it by coming to work in a more sustainable way. There are other things that you can do, of course. You can say to people, well, don't bother coming to work. Stay at home and work from home. That's the most sustainable form of transport, not having to use any at all. Okay? And so you usually get lots of objections to that. People will say, well, can't possibly allow people to work from home because they won't do any work. Well, if that's what you're thinking, you've got far more problems in the fact that you don't trust your employees than you have to worry about mobility as an issue. So you need to get the trust issue sorted out and then let them work from home. Okay? That's how to tackle it. So home working is really superb. It's very sustainable. Saves people loads of money as well in lots of other ways, not just transport. Motivates staff as well. Certainly in a lot of places, businesses have introduced it slowly. So they've said to people, you can work from home once a week. Every week you can work from home once a week, or you can work from home 2 days a week. And slowly they increase it. There's always a good reason to bring people together, because the most productive work with teams is done when you're actually in the same place together, sharing ideas. I mean, look at what's happening here when I'm training you. You wouldn't get exactly the same experience if you were just listening to me on the radio. I mean, I can't keep my arms still for 2 seconds. You know, I try and take them behind my back sometimes, but it's quite difficult. That sort of interaction, you can see whether people are serious or whether they agree with you or not. When they're on the other end of a telephone, or, you know, it's sometimes difficult. People can fool you. Teleconferencing is good because you can see people's face, so it's almost like having them there. I use this a lot now. It's good for me as a consultant because I have to pay for everything now. So if I don't have to travel to a meeting, it saves me directly. So if I can use Skype, which I do all the time, then, you know, it's fantastic. And, you know, sometimes you can get excellent broadband connections like this hotel, for example. This connection in this hotel is incredible. I've never known one as fast as this. It's superb. And it's free. Wow. Low energy cars. Are you able to join some sort of a scheme in the town where you can offer some form of discount to people when they go and buy a new car, when they're ready to replace a vehicle? If they buy it from a particular provider, garage or whatever, and it's a more sustainable vehicle, will they give them a little bit of discount because they're working for you? You know, it's amazing. It doesn't have to cost you as a business. You just have some sort of an arrangement with them that they will give a good rate to your employees. You can do that sometimes. So the last thing on our list was training people about sustainability. How do they do it? In the course of these 2 days, can't begin to give you full in-depth training on environmental management. It's a snapshot. I mean, I could spend a whole day just talking about energy. I do spend a whole day talking about energy with certain groups. We haven't got that opportunity here because we've got a big agenda. But there is lots of skill that you can tap into out there to learn about energy. So people in your business, if they're given that as a task, as part of their job, look at what we can do to try and reduce our energy consumption, then give them the information they need to learn about energy management. There's a lot of online training that's available. There's some in Travelife. There's another very good organisation that has lots of free materials. It's called the Travel Foundation, and it's www.travelfoundation.org.uk. That's .org.uk. This is a charity, and well, it might be based in the UK, but its outreach is global. They produce lots and lots and lots of training tools and materials, clips you can download from the website, templates that you can use for all manner of things, and it's a really useful resource. Okay? So training people is vital. You can't expect people to do a good job if they don't know how to do it. It motivates people, it gives them skills. There's nothing bad about training. If you have to pay for it, it's an investment, and it's an investment in people. And that's important in a business that relies upon employees. If you've got a big policy, sustainability policy, then training people gives them some feeling of not just motivation, but they are behind it. So they'll accept some things which they might find a little bit more difficult. So you can ease them through that process by training them in areas that make them feel empowered. Obviously, you can use all your normal forms of communication methods to train people. It doesn't have to be formal classroom training. It can be training that's done in a morning, in a briefing, maybe at the beginning of the week or the last thing on a Friday. People do briefings at all strange times of the week and day. Could be just done through the intranet if you've got one, or on newsletters that you put up on a notice board. Not that they're that sustainable, because it's better to have them on the PC. What about staff awards? You can incentivise people to do things. It doesn't cost a lot to get a cup. You're going to rotate it around the office. It's got a green ribbon on it, if you like, for environmental management. And the person that comes up with the best idea each month gets to have that sitting on the desk for the month as the environmental champion. It's nothing, costs nothing, but actually motivating people, it works wonders. Simple things. ABTA, I don't know whether they still do it, but when I was there, if for a whole week you turned your computer off totally when you left at the end of the day, then on a Friday there was a chocolate sitting on your workspace. Of course, there were some unscrupulous people that used to go and swap chocolates around. Well, that's neither here nor there. But it was a gimmick, and it was a gimmick that worked because it made people think, yeah, actually, I can implement that. People can be really creative in how you can incentivize people to do things. This is just a snapshot of what your average person in an office consumes during 1 year. So, in all of the activities of that person in the office, it amounts to about 550 litres of petrol, because of course this is getting to and from work and going to meetings and whatever. About a tonne of coal, that's coal that might be used for some transport but also for energy or heating, even if it's a non-renewable heating source in the office. 12,000 litres of water, 180 kilograms of waste, 3.5, 5 tonnes of carbon dioxide, immeasurable amounts of radiation coming from these things, and 150 kilograms of paper. That's per person. It's a colossal amount. That's consumption. Anything that we can do to try and bring that down, I mean, it'd be interesting, wouldn't it, to see if you can calculate for people in your office how they compare to that in 12 months. So that might be one of the actions you set yourself at the end of this training. From this slide, set some goals. Now, we mentioned compensating for energy that you have to consume, either in the form of equipment in the office or getting you around in the form of transport that's requiring an energy source. So you have to do it. So how can you make up for the fact that you've produced all this carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and contributed to global warming and greenhouse gas? Well, there are a number of things you can do. You could, first of all, look at both business trips, so when people are moving around from meetings, as well as internal energy use. You might deal with them in different ways. You could just simply purchase carbon offset credits, which means that you look for a commercial package. There's lots of them on the internet. So every time you travel, you calculate the number of miles and you pay that amount into the carbon compensation scheme. And at the end of the year, then the business discloses that on their profit and loss statement, because you can, for most destinations, then it's tax deductible because it's a good activity, it's a green activity, it's a tax deductible activity. So you can put that in there. Okay? This is an organisation in the Netherlands called Trees for Travel. They have a tree planting scheme, and actually it was created by a group of tour operators initially, and it seems to work very, very well. Personally, I'm not really that much into tree planting. I think that it's a little bit of a long-term answer, and while those trees are growing, you're still committing more sins by producing more carbon into the atmosphere. I don't think it's a particularly good. You need it, you've got to replace trees, but it doesn't compensate sufficiently for me fast enough. I like things which are going into projects that really make a big difference. So putting money into renewable energy projects. So we're not actually burning fossil fuels and contributing to the carbon dioxide at all. If we go for something like hydropower or wind power, something like this, or solar even, then we're not really putting much carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Okay, we're having to manufacture the equipment. I was talking to somebody in the break about, it was you, wasn't it, talking about the cost of photo. It was you, okay. I thought he was looking blank at me then. It was, yes, it was you. We were talking about the cost of solar panels compared to the benefit of having that as a supplementing your energy consumption. Well, you've got to think about the life cycle of a product. It's really important. So it's not just about the carbon that's produced by using it. It's about the carbon that was produced in manufacturing that technology. That's also as important. It's one of the bugbears I have over the rail network, because people think that rail travel is one of the most sustainable forms of travel. But when you think about the infrastructure, all the steel that has to go down, the track, all the concrete that has to go underneath it, all the overhead cables and God knows what else, the infrastructure of it's huge. That seems to go unmentioned by a lot of people. It's a huge contributor. There's lots of other schemes around that you could look at. Credit, credit trading is the new way that people are going. So basically, you buy the right to pollute. That doesn't sit well with me either, really. Buying the right to pollute. You take away somebody else's credits, so they pollute less, but you pollute more. So what changes? It's still pollution. So it's the same amount of carbon going into the atmosphere, it's just coming from you instead of somebody else. That's why I'm not particularly keen on this as a solution. Okay? But look at what's out there. You can do it really creatively. Okay. So we're going to have a bit of a gear change now. We're going to look at some things that you can do with suppliers rather than internal management.